What are you doing in my swamp?
Hello everybody, this is Overboy and I'm going to be doing my ranking for all 13 movies in the X-Men franchise. So over the last few months I've reviewed all of the X-Men movies, so I thought I'd go ahead and take time to stop and rank them. So coming in at number 13 is X-Men Origins Wolverine. This is the first movie in Wolverine's trilogy, and it follows how he became the Wolverine we've met in the first X-Men movie. And I'm not a huge fan of this movie. There are a lot of problems with it. The writing is just not the best. They butchered Deadpool, which is the biggest problem I have with the movie. But Tyler Kish's Gambit kind of just seemed miscast. The action is okay. There were some cool action scenes, like especially that one where you see him walking away from the fire and stuff from the explosion he causes. That was pretty cool and everything. And Hugh Jackman is once again excellent as Wolverine, so there is that. I will say that he was great in here. The visual effects suck though. They have some really awful CGI effects, and this movie is known for just being a really big disappointment. It had a lot of potential to be a lot better than it was and everything. So a lot of the decisions they made with this movie, especially with what they did with Deadpool and stuff, just really kind of ruins the movie for me. But even though I don't really care for it very much, I can at least handle watching it, so I can say it's at least a little bit watchable, if nothing else. But I just don't really like it. And it's never going to be an X-Men movie I go to just to watch because I want to watch an X-Men movie. I usually only watch it when I'm going through the X-Men franchise. So X-Men Origins Wolverine is number 13, and number 12 is X-Men The Last Stand. I really like this movie in a lot of ways because it's kind of really grown on me, and I'm starting to have a little nostalgia for it because and everything, but I don't really think it's a great movie. The story is all over the place. They have too many plot lines going on with the mutants wanting to cure, Magneto wanting to stop humankind, Professor Xavier's death, the Dark Phoenix stuff. There's just so much going on in this movie. They introduce way too many new characters and everything, and this movie could have been so much better compared to the first two X-Men's. I remember when I saw this the first time and felt like this was the first really truly disappointing movie I had gone to see and everything, because this movie really disappointed me when it first came out. And while I don't like it much more now, I do think it is better than it was that very first time I saw it. I can handle rewatching it and everything. It has some decent moments. It just isn't one of those movies that I'm that big on. So X-Men The Last Stand is number 12, and number 11 is X-Men Apocalypse. I almost put this one under X-Men The Last Stand because of the fact that this movie is just really forgettable, but there are a lot of things I like about it. I think it is a decent enough movie. I enjoy watching it and everything. I enjoy the younger cast and everything, getting to see these new actors playing Storm and Jean and Cyclops. I think they're all good in their roles and everything. I didn't really care for Apocalypse, though. He just really was not the best villain and everything, and from what I understand, he's supposed to be a lot better than he was portrayed in this movie. But I think Apocalypse is okay. It's not as bad as some people say it is. I know a lot of people love to hate on this one and everything. I wouldn't say it's as bad as they say, but it isn't one of the best in the franchise for sure. And it has some of the worst CGI in the franchise too, aside from X-Men Origins Wolverine. But all in all, I think Apocalypse is okay. It's not very good. It's not terrible, but it's not great either. It just is okay. Right there is a mediocre movie. And we're kind of into the mediocre parts of this franchise for me. But so X-Men Apocalypse is number 11, and number 10 is Dark Phoenix. I like this one quite a bit. I think it's a lot better than most people say it is. It does have its issues too. There was a lot of production problems, and you can see it a lot in the final product. But I will say the movie itself is alright. I will say Jennifer Lawrence's performance though was pretty terrible, and luckily she's only in here during the first act of the movie, but I didn't really care too much for her portrayal of Mystique in this one. She hadn't really been very good as Mystique since Days of Future Past, and I think part of that is just she got tired of playing the character, but she wasn't as good as she could have been. But I will say Michael Fassbender just steals the show once again as Magneto. He's not in this one near as much and everything, but when he's on screen, especially during that train sequence, he's just awesome. And that train sequence at the end of the movie itself is just really cool. You get to see all of the X-Men have their little moments to shine. It's a lot of fun watching and everything, but this movie should have been a two-parter. I honestly feel like they should have made it two parts. It was originally planned to be one, and they changed a lot of things with the villains and stuff like that, and it's the most mediocre villains in the franchise. Like, I will say that this one and Apocalypse have the worst villains and everything, but this movie could have been so much better. But it is a huge step up from the version of the Dark Phoenix saga that we got with X-Men The Last Stand. But still could have been better. Could have been worse, but could have been better. So it's number 10. And number 9 is The New Mutants. I know a lot of people love hating on this one too, and I think part of it is we're at the point now where if a superhero movie isn't connected to the MCU, we're not supposed to enjoy it. That's how it seems like it is with a lot of fans. But I love New Mutants. I don't get the hate on it. It's not the best movie. It has a lot of flaws. You can tell that, like with Dark Phoenix, they went through a lot of production problems. But for what it is, I think it's still okay. The movie's only 94 minutes long, so it doesn't overstay its welcome. It gets straight to the point of what they're doing with the story, and it works for me. I know some movies like this that get straight to the point and stuff feel too rushed and everything, and this one does feel rushed, but I also still enjoyed it. I like the new characters that we were introduced to that unfortunately we'll never get to see again. Especially Danny, the main character, the one that has the powers with where she can like read everybody's mind and stuff. She's just really a likable character, and I liked other characters in this movie and everything. I like the horror elements, and the visuals and the cinematography is really good in here. It has some really breathtaking visuals and stuff. It's not 100% a bad movie. There's a lot of problems with the story and the writing, but and the character development, a lot of the characters are underdeveloped, but there's just something about it that I enjoy the movie enough for what it is. I think they had too many characters in here. They should have just maybe had 2 or 3 mutants instead of 4 or 5. I can't remember exactly how many they had, but I think they should have just kept it on certain ones and everything. But for what it is, it's fine. It's a decent enough movie. So New Mutants is number 9, and number 8 is The Wolverine. This one would probably be even higher if it wasn't for the ending. I love this movie for the most part. It has some really awesome action scenes. The story is really great. I love how it's character driven with Wolverine, kind of like how James Mangold did the character driven story with Logan and everything. I love that about this movie. The action scenes though, they're really awesome, especially the bullet train scene where he's fighting the samurai on the train. I just absolutely love that sequence, and really all the action scenes are really good, but the action is kind of just mediocre in the third act when you get to the big twist at the end of it, and That part could have been better. Aside from that, though, I think that this is a pretty good movie, with a really good cast and everything. Hugh Jackman gives one of his best performances in this movie as a character, but he's always top notch as this character, so I don't know why I'm saying anything on that. And it's a good movie. Just could have had a better ending. So the Wolverine is number 8, and number 7 is Deadpool. This one is one that I really loved it a lot when it came out, and it's kind of dropped a little bit. Part of it is I just think it's kind of middle of the road mediocre nowadays. I just don't find it as funny. Maybe it's because I watched it too much when it first came out and everything, and kind of got myself tired of it, but the jokes don't land as much anymore. Maybe it's because I've seen the movie enough times that it just isn't as funny and stuff. I just think it's okay. I will say that Ryan Reynolds, though, is perfect casting for Deadpool. I'm not the hugest Ryan Reynolds fan, but that's the one character of his that I agree with everybody on, that he's like the perfect choice for it. His performance as Deadpool is one of those rare performances where you can't see anybody else but him playing the character, where other characters you can kind of see it if other people were to play them, but this one, I can't see anybody else playing Deadpool other than Ryan Reynolds. And it's a decent little origin story for Deadpool and stuff. It just isn't quite as funny as it used to be. So there's some parts that I still laugh out loud on, but other parts it just isn't as funny as it was when I saw it for the first time in 2016. So that's why it's dropped so much. So Deadpool is number 7, and number 6 is X-Men First Class. And this one, kind of like Deadpool, I don't really enjoy it as much on rewatch, but for some reason I've always really liked this movie. There's a lot of things in here that I love, especially getting to see how Professor X and Magneto met and how their friendship went. They went from friends to enemies and stuff like that. I love that. And Kevin Bacon, as the villain of this movie, is just absolutely amazing. He does such a great job playing the villain of this movie. The rest of the cast are pretty good. I like a lot of the newer additions that we get to meet that never go anywhere in any of the sequels. And everything. I think that could be part of why this isn't as much as one of my favorites as it used to be, because some of the sequels kind of tarnished it. But I absolutely love the casting of Charles Xavier and Magneto in this. Michael Fassbender as Magneto is just one of my favorite castings in the entire franchise. But I also love James McAvoy as Charles Xavier, and personally would have rather see him pop up in a certain movie that came out earlier this month instead of getting Patrick Stewart back. But I think he's fine in the role, and I think he deserves to get at least one more good chance at playing Charles Xavier again, because he was pretty underrated in the role. Everyone always gives credit to Patrick Stewart, and there's nothing wrong with Patrick Stewart's version. I think he's excellent, especially in Logan, but I think that James McAvoy deserves some credit too and everything, which just isn't even his best performance as a character. I'll get to that movie in a little bit, but I do love this one. So X-Men First Class is number 6, and number 5 is Deadpool 2. This one is a really good sequel. I actually really enjoyed this movie a lot when I rewatched it this time. I had only seen it one time in the theater when it first came out, and at that time I just didn't care for the movie, but upon rewatch I really enjoyed it this time. And I think part of it is T.J. Miller isn't in it near as much, which to me was a huge step up for the first one right there, is just not having him in it as much, because I can't stand TJ Miller, and I think that's one of the reasons why I don't enjoy the first one as much as I used to. But the story is a lot better, the action is better, the humor is better, and it just has a lot of heart and stuff to it. All in all, it's a really fun movie. And Ryan Reynolds is once again excellent as Deadpool. And then you get Cable in here, played by Josh Brolin, who is just absolutely great in the role in this movie as well. And the one thing I did wish is that we would have gotten more Thanos jokes, but I understand why they didn't and everything. They could have oversaturated it with Thanos jokes. Thank God they didn't do that, but I wish we could have at least got maybe one or two other ones. But the one we did get was pretty funny and everything. It just kind of came out of nowhere. I was waiting for him to make a Thanos reference, and it took longer in the movie than I expected it would, but yeah, this is a really fun movie. It does have a lot of stuff going on in here, and I know some people don't like that about it, but it doesn't bother me quite as bad on this one as it does other movies. Maybe it's just because the pacing is just so well done and everything, and it moves from one thing to another. Like at the beginning of the movie, he loses his girlfriend, then he goes through his depression and joins the X-Men, gets kicked out of the X-Men, starts having to save this kid from Cable, teams up with Cable by the end of the movie to help stop this kid from becoming crazy. And it's nothing really new for the X-Men franchise. So we've seen time travel stuff used for similar things and everything, but it's just a fun movie and everything. So Deadpool 2 is number 5, and number 4 is X-Men, the original. I really love this one quite a bit. It was one of the movies that kind of got me into the superhero genre. Spider-Man solidified that a couple years later, but this is a pretty fun movie. It doesn't have a lot of a story, really. It kind of just is introducing you to the world. It has a lot of good world building and stuff, and a good introduction to the characters and everything, but it's not like a high stakes movie or anything like that. But it's always been one from my childhood that I've always really liked and everything, and it still holds up really well, and for the longest time it was my third favorite, but on this rewatch it dropped down to number 4. But I still think the first X-Men movie is still one of the best in the franchise easily, so it's number 4. And number 3 is X-Men Days of Future Past. Now, this time I didn't watch the theatrical version because I was never a big fan of that version, but I had heard the road cut was a little bit better and stuff, and I watched it, but I watched it as the road cut this time, and it felt like a different movie experience for me because I really enjoyed it this time. The story was really good, the animation the acting is really great, the visual effects are much better in this one, like the CGI and stuff looks a lot better. In this version, it's more polished, and we get the scenes with Rogue, who is one of my favorite characters and stuff. So that was kind of a cool thing too. She's not in it very much and everything, but it was still cool getting to have her in here for a few minutes. And the movie's 14 minutes longer, so it adds little things to the story that just to me makes the movie better and everything. And it's a really entertaining movie. And when I watch Days of Future Past, this is the version I'm going to go to. I won't probably ever watch the theatrical version again, but all in all, I think it's a really, really great movie, and it's a highlight of the X-Men franchise and everything. Bringing both of these versions of the characters all together in one movie was a hard task, and I think that this version of the movie pulled it off really well. So X-Men Days of Future Past is number 3, and number 2 is X2. This one has always been one of my favorite comic book movies of all time, and one of my favorite movies in the franchise. In fact, it was my favorite for a really long time, but I absolutely love X2. It's been one of my favorites since I was a kid. I have a lot of nostalgia for it because a special friend of mine took me to see this when I was a kid and everything, so I've always kind of had nostalgia for it. I've had toys from the movie, and I was really, really into this movie when it first came out. It was one of my favorite movies of the summer, and I was actually really impressed even back then with how good of a sequel this movie was, because like this took everything that made the first one great and upped it and everything. The action is excellent, especially that fight with Wolverine and Lady Deathstrike. Every time I watch that scene, it's just so awesome. And there's a lot of other really cool moments in here. The opening with Nightcrawler is awesome, and it's just a really fun movie, and one of the highlights of the franchise. And out of the core X-Men movies where it's about the groups and stuff, this is easily my favorite one. But there's one more movie that's in this franchise that I'd have to put over it and everything. But X2 is a very high number 2. Coming in at number 1 is Logan. I just absolutely love this movie. It's one of my favorite comic book movies of all time, and it's definitely one of my favorite Marvel movies too. Like, I'd probably have it in my top 3 favorite Marvel movies after the first two Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. I just absolutely love this movie. The performances by Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart are amazing in here. This was a really great swan song for Hugh Jackman's version of Wolverine. I really hope we never get him returning for any MCU movies, whether it's a different version of the character or not. With Hugh Jackman just playing the role, I really hope this never happens, because this should be the final time we see him as Wolverine, because it's such a perfect ending to his character arc and his story, and bringing him back just would spoil this movie. It's already kind of been spoiled a little bit with Patrick Stewart, but I still say this was his best performance as a character, and anything that comes after it with Patrick Stewart is not going to be near as good as this. And this was a perfect ending to his version of Professor X2. I wish it would have stayed the definite ending, but it's still a really great movie. And Daphne Keane as X-23 is just awesome. She's a little badass. I wish we would have gotten more with her too. They could have easily set her up with her own trilogy after this movie and everything, but Disney bought Fox right after this movie came out, so it kind of messed up everything they had planned. But I would have loved to see X-23 and more stuff, and I'm hoping that maybe they'll decide to have her as the main Wolverine for the MCU, and possibly bring Daphne Keane back as an adult version of the character or something. Who knows? By the time the movie comes out, she'd be an adult anyway, so it's hard to say. But this is a really good movie, so I definitely would say Logan is my favorite movie in the X-Men franchise. So anyway, let me know in the comments what your favorite X-Men movies are. If you want, you can tell me your favorite and least favorite, or do your full ranking, however you want to do it. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and have a good day, everybody.